So we arrive in Africa after 36 hours of plane travel and then another 4.5 hours of travel from the capital city. And then we leave and we go and do our first program in one of the villages. And when we get there, we stop outside of the village and they start a parade for us as we enter the village. One of the team members sits down and a lady walks over with her little girl and asked if we would pray for healing. Her feet are turned in, her knees are turned in, and it's very clear that she's not able to use her legs on her own. So Ashlyn begins to pray for her little girl, and I'm about 20 feet away from this, and I'm kind of watching, and I don't really know what's happening at first, but then I see people from the village start surrounding Ashlyn, and so I make my way over to her, and one of the pastors from one of the other villages has come over, and he makes his way into the circle, and the three of us begin praying for this little girl. In all the times that I've gone to Africa, you know, I've heard of things happening that are miraculous. I've witnessed some things on the periphery, but if I'm being totally honest, I'm a little bit skeptical. Ashlyn takes the little girl's hands, and I get behind the little girl, and one step at a time, this little girl, assisted, takes a little step, and then another little step, and we do this for probably 15 or 20 feet, and one of the people around us said, "In Jesus' name." And Ashlyn looked up and said, "Everybody say that." And we suddenly had 15 or 20 people, it may have been more, I don't know, because we were in the middle, just chanting, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus." And I remember in the moment thinking, you know, God, why aren't you just miraculously strengthening her legs? Why aren't they just straight and strong and she's just jumping up and down and doing a cartwheel? Come to find out later, after everything's done for that day, that the people in the village were amazed that God had done a miracle because that little girl had never stood on her feet before. She'd never taken a step, assisted or not. So to them, her walking 15 feet with just somebody holding her hand, that was a miracle. So about 5 years ago, Blue Ridge heard about a pastor in Sierra Leone, Francis Rogers, who had started a home for children who either were orphaned, a lot of them from the Civil War in Sierra Leone, and some of them whose parents just had no means to take care of them. And he felt called by God through dreams and visions that he was supposed to take care of these children. And so he started an orphanage to do that. And that ministry grew into the children's home, a school for those children to be able to go to school at, and then out of his church, a ministry of sending pastors out to plant new churches, of which now there's 28 churches that have been planted through his ministry. Over the 5 years, Blue Ridge has supplied solar panels. We've provided 3 motorcycles recently for 3 of the pastors that Blue Ridge supports directly. We've bought a dump truck last year. That's how they get to some of these villages that are way out in the bush, is they basically create their own roads or repair their own roads to be able to get the pastors out there. Blue Ridge provided a water tower that provided water during the dry season. And then the last trip that we went on before COVID, in that trip, we had actually taken I think 16 suitcases full of clothing for the children in the home. In the years that we aren't able to do that, Blue Ridge has supplied the funds for them to be able to get new clothes for the kids in the home. I've been 4 times to Sierra Leone, and on the trips that I've gone on, what we generally do is we'll take a kids program that we would do here on a Sunday with a very gospel-centered focus, and we'll take that out to one of these villages where a church has been recently planted. And we'll put on a kids program. Usually we have several hundred kids and then their parents that'll come around the outside. After the program, we have teams, pairs, 2 by 2 that go out into the village and just evangelize, find people that are willing to talk to us, talk to them about Jesus, ask if there's anything we can pray for. This most recent trip at one village, there was 7 Muslims that gave their life to Christ during that time. It's a really cool relationship that we have with them. There's multiple people who have been on this trip multiple times. There's relationships that have been built with some of the kids there, some of the pastors there. There's kids here who write letters to the kids there and vice versa. And then additionally, that there's people in the church that are supporting kids. So a team just got back from Sierra Leone in the middle of October, and it was a great trip. Thursday afternoon, one of the members of the team got very ill. And I actually went in and felt their forehead myself, and their forehead was so hot that when I touched it, I actually pulled my hand away immediately. There's no doctor to go get. There's no place to take him to a clinic or an urgent care. It was basically, okay, well, we're going to put a cold washcloth on his forehead and just pray that the fever will break. He was so weak that he couldn't actually turn his head to look at me when he was talking to me. He just laid in bed, and he told me and the rest of the team to go ahead and go to the church service that we were going to go to Thursday night. Pastor Francis got up and he preached a beautiful message about having faith. And there was probably 50 or 60 people there outside of the team from Blue Ridge. And he asked all of us to pray at the same time. He told them what was going on with the team member back at the mission house. And he asked the entire church to just pray. And over there, when they pray, a lot of times they'll do corporate prayer where they all pray at the same time. And so you're in this church and you're just hearing all of these people lift up this team member and just ask for healing. We left that church maybe 15 minutes later, and we get back to the mission house, and the team member is sitting out on the front porch in a chair. I walked up and I asked him how he was feeling, and he said he was feeling pretty good. And I said, well, you had a church of about 60 people praying specifically for you about half an hour ago. And he said that about half an hour ago, he was laying in that bed, and he suddenly just felt the fever break, and he felt good enough to go take a shower, and he went and took a shower and then came outside and sat down. And I don't know what else that is but God. In all the times that I've gone to Africa, I've heard of things happening that are miraculous, but if I'm being totally honest, I'm a little bit skeptical. It's not that I doubt that God can do things. It's just, I don't know for sure that he will do things. And so that's the filter that I have. And I wish I didn't. I wish I could just believe that God will, that he will do the things that I know that he's capable of doing. But in my mind, I'm a little bit like Thomas. I want to see the holes. I want to feel them myself to know that he's alive. And on this trip, I feel like I got to see the holes in his hands.